So I hope everybody's well. What I wanted to do today was to record a video based on the Rumi quote, which is "Stop acting so small, you are the universe in ecstatic motion." It's also a video which is quite personal to me as well, and it's been requested as well. And it's really the question that I'm posing in this video is, why are you acting so small? I have for a number of years, while traveling and speaking, not really wanted to do this work, and there's been a lot of self-sabotage. I've had a number of major interviews with some pretty big podcasts, and then decided to delete my social media over the years or get rid of my website. In other words, not really taking advantage of the opportunities that were presented to me. And recently, what I found is I really do want to talk about this now. There is this desire, as I've said in my newsletter and across social media and in my videos as well, to talk about this, but it's not coming from a personal place. Allied to that, what I found is I really want to sort out my life, so to speak. I want the material comforts, which is something that for years I didn't really want. It's also been echoed by people in the group now who are starting to go, why are we living this way? Why are we playing so small? So what I want to do in this video is maybe offer some insights, some pointers, maybe use some of my personal experience as well to try and unpack why we act so small. It is a huge topic, I'll admit, but what I'll try and do is obviously add some sort of value to the body of knowledge there already. I think one of the reasons, and this is something that's come up a lot for me as to why we act small, is because of acceptance, and is this acceptance of more success, more responsibility, more of everything really. And sometimes when you're so used to having so little, or you've played so small for so long and been in this comfort zone, that acceptance can be a direct attack upon what's comfortable and what's right for you. And we know that our subconscious programming is designed really just to keep us safe. So it wants every day to be pretty much the same. So it creates this comfort zone, and any kind of movement to break out of that can feel quite uncomfortable. The reason, again, so following on from that, I suppose the second reason is we just don't like feeling uncomfortable. We live in this hyper connected world now, where everything is on demand, and it's all about making us comfortable. So when we feel uncomfortable, we inevitably either break through that comfort and go on to really live our lives as empowered as possible, or we look to act small because it's comfortable, it's safe. It basically means that nothing really changes in our lives, and we are able to predict the future and have some sort of control. When we stop acting small, what we find is this idea of control of what we thought we knew is challenged. Our knowledge base has to grow, or our knowledge bases seem to be completely redundant. And we find, again, it's a really, really, really uncomfortable place. It basically means you either grow and push through that resistance, which is screaming at you that this isn't safe, this isn't good. That yes, you may want this growth, but it's really, really uncomfortable, because sometimes I believe our ideas on growth as well are completely wrong, because we believe that this journey to realization, or this journey to this empowered version of ourselves, this self-actualized being, is going to be something that's going to be really, really lovely and blissful. And whenever there's some uncomfortableness, and this was something I saw recently, we inevitably, when it gets interesting, we want to run away from that situation. So I think the reason we act so small is because it is just so comfortable. It is just so familiar to us. But why do we do that? Why are we acting small? Why don't we go out into the world and claim what's ours and live these empowered lives? If anything, what this pandemic has shown us is how fragile life is, and how precious it is, and how what we feel is security can be taken away from us at any moment. And yet we go on living these really, really small lives in which we're comfortable, and yet we take our dreams and we choke them. We occasionally dream that we could be these bold, empowered beings that are running around the world doing what they want. And I think the only reason we stay like this is, as I keep repeating, it's comfortable. And I think it's only until there's a shock to our system, or some sort of agitation do we decide to look to kind of just push our borders out and become, comfortable with being uncomfortable? And what we then tend to find is that the limits that we have and what we feel we are constantly breached, and we realize we're capable of so much more. Like I said, over the last couple of years, I have self-sabotaged, I've been scared, I've traveled, I've destroyed relationships and pretty much everything. And it's been a time of such intense growth. And it's now led to a point where, yes, I want to speak about this. And I know that I'll even move away from topics like this as well, to really get to the heart of what it is that's being pointed to, this whole idea of realization. But I also realize it's a process, and sometimes we have to take our time with this process as well. The whole idea with moving from playing small to playing on a bigger platform is that there is change involved. And I think sometimes we misunderstand change because we want it all to happen right now. And what I've found over the last couple of years is that change can be very slow, it can be very incremental, and it takes into account your emotional makeup, your psychological makeup as well. So sometimes maybe just slowing down and just really taking our time. There's this great Japanese management theory called Kaizen, where they talk about just literally improving by 1%. It's an idea I believe that James Clear in his book Atomic Habits has really ran with. And I wrote an article as well called The Power of Incremental Acceptance, which I'll link at the bottom of this video, in which you can read about some of my ideas about incrementally accepting more into our lives. Because sometimes if we go from, I remember meeting a couple years ago, and one of their videos has gone viral on YouTube and it almost destroyed them. I remember them saying that there was just a point where they were just watching the YouTube counter. And I think when we hear examples like that, it does scare us, and it tells us that maybe playing small is okay, because we're not rocking the boat, because we are literally going into the unknown when we look to play bigger. But I think if there's enough agitation, enough of a shock in our lives, and when we start finding that the ideas that we've held as truth are being challenged now in an ever-evolving and ever-changing world, we may decide that it's really just time to put down these ideas. Maybe get out that relationship you don't want to be in, get out that job that you don't really want to be in, that you're absolutely killing yourself. Examine the thoughts. I had this beautiful conversation with someone who was saying that they'd been in this job for about 15 years plus, and they hated the job, but what was stopping them was these thoughts of, how will my bills be paid? Maybe examine those thoughts, find out if they're true or not. Maybe speak to people who've taken the journey as well. I remember 6-7 years ago, I was starting a brand new IT job. Everything was wonderful, and life decided it wanted to go the other way. And yes, ideas like, oh my God, how am I going to pay my rent this month? How am I going to pay my bills? Came up. But by trusting, what I found was I was able to make that transition from a guy who was just in a really horrible job, doing something he absolutely hated, into living a life now where I'm starting to find, although it hasn't been easy, I'm starting to create something which I'm proud of, and which I'm really looking to see how I can expand. Also look out for the signs. I don't know why I want to throw this into the video, but I will. Also listen to people around you. I remember once being let go of from a sales job, and it'd been about 6-7 weeks, and it'd been torrid to say the least. I wasn't doing the numbers that I normally tended to do. And I remember going into the office with the MD, and he said, look, you had to let me go. And there was this sigh of relief, I must admit, from me. And then he turned around to me and he said, look, can I give you some advice? And I was like, okay. And he goes, look, until you work for yourself, you'll never be happy. And I absolutely hated him for saying that, because of the fact that he was so right. He was so true. It would then be another couple of years of working jobs and getting to that point where it was like life made that decision for me. I wonder if I'd been brave enough to make that decision myself. So sometimes we can find that we can be acting small and be frustrated, and the decision gets taken out of our hands, and life decides that life is going to make that decision for you because you're not moving fast enough. So that can happen as well. And that does tend to be pretty crazy. but you find you get through, because when we're in those places of uncomfortableness, when we're out of our comfort zone, we tend to find that the limited story that we've told ourselves isn't true, and that everything passes. Some wonderful opportunities have presented themselves to me over the last couple of years, and yes, I'll admit some I've totally thrown out the window thanks to my self-sabotage, and some I've gone with. But I've noticed that I've grown. So you will also find that when you start acting that little bit bigger, and when you start living the life that you really truly deserve, that you will still sabotage, because you're not going to suddenly become all accepting of everything. That change, that moving the borders of what's comfortable for you, will happen slowly and incrementally. And that's something, which we have to honor rather than trying to force it. Because when we do try to force these things, we create a lot of resistance. I have a dear friend who's absolutely wonderful at creating change in organizations. And yet what's really interesting is when it gets interesting, she'll run out the door. But doesn't actually, and has done this repeatedly and is aware of this, but sometimes we have to then also repeat patterns as well until we start seeing the futility of them. I've recently become aware of a lot of my patterns. I've become aware of a lot of the ways I act around people. And sometimes we have to repeat that pattern to the point where we become very familiar with that pattern. Like I said, playing a certain way, when we start wanting to transition into a bigger playing field, we become aware of what we're doing. But that doesn't mean it's going to stop overnight. Sometimes we need to go through those patterns over and over and over and over and over again to really see the futility of those patterns, and then we let go, or we're made to let go. And that's something I'm seeing at the moment. I've become aware of the way I speak, the way I dress, the way I act, and I can see how I will be moving, but I also can see that I'm not quite ready for that move, and I seem to be transitioning to that, transitioning to maybe taking better care of myself, maybe dressing differently, maybe speaking differently, maybe changing where I live, my environment, the people I'm with. A lot of people, I think the reason they find they play small is because they believe that change is going to just come suddenly, violently into their lives, and they're not going to be able to cope. Sometimes we can cope when we take our time, when we lengthen our timelines and decide that, yes, I want that great body, but I'm not going to try and do it in 21 days. I'm going to take my time and really learn about that. And so what we find is, if we come from a place of ease and come from a place of slowing down and being present, we can also manage that transition from playing small to moving on to a bigger stage, so to speak. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say about that. If you haven't subscribed to the video and you like the content, please do subscribe. Also hit the like button. Also, I'm noticing that obviously organic reaches are kind of going down. So if you want to receive these videos regularly, please hit the bell icon. It gets you notified whenever I'm live, because a lot of these videos are now are being premiered, so you can watch them live. And also by hitting that bell icon, you make sure that you're going to be notified whenever a video is released. So thank you so much for watching the video. Have a wonderful day, and I shall catch you on the next video.